My name is Sgambelluri. I am the District 2 representative for Bloomington Common Council. So I represent the north and near north side of Bloomington. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Mostly I was asked. I have always been involved in community service in one way or another, and I've worked on habitat homes, and I've had leadership roles in my church and a lot of other things. I was asked to serve on the Redevelopment Commission for the City of Bloomington in 2015, I think, which is a fairly high-level group, and tens of millions of dollars worth of decisions goes before that group. So I got a sense of what kind of skill sets, what kind of temperament is needed to make those kinds of decisions and to think in those kind of arenas. And I had a fair number of people say, you would be really good at this. So I wasn't necessarily seeking elected office. I was just looking for the next opportunity to serve with the skills and the knowledge I had. And it just so happened that the next position happened to be one that required being elected. So that's how I came to be that. So.
Great.
There isn't an average day. I can talk about kind of the clusters of things I work on, okay? A portion of what I do is just constituent work. I think one of the ways in which I approach this work is that of a problem solver. I help people solve problems. I help people access their government in ways that are useful to them and that help make things better. So I would guess maybe a third of the time is focused on that, answering questions, holding constituent meetings, holding sessions where I can teach or about particular issues that are coming before us. So about that much. About a third of the time is research. I am not a utilities professional naturally. I'm not a public works professional. I'm a fundraiser in my day job. So there's a lot to learn, and there is a ton of reading involved in this role. So a lot of it is just research and doing everything I can to make sure I understand as best I can what I need to in order to make good decisions. And then maybe roughly a third is collaborating with colleagues on council on the actual legislation. So deciding, okay, what kind of legislation needs to come forward at a given time, what might be our response to legislation that comes from the mayor, from the administration, how can that legislation be adjusted or amended in ways that might better serve Bloomington? When the shutdown came in March of 2020, we knew that it would be a serious hit to our local economy. Bloomington is very dependent on travel and tourism. It's very dependent on the 40,000 customers that just happen to be students. So when students left first for spring break, then that got extended, and then it became clear they weren't coming back. When it became clear that we were going to lose major event weekends like graduation and Mother's Day and so forth, several of us knew we had to do something. So I was able to work with an economic stabilization and recovery group, which is kind of an interdisciplinary group that included people from the chamber, people from the city, elected officials, and we were able to stand up a $2.5 million rapid response loan fund that made loans available so local businesses could be tided over, could stay afloat during a rough patch. And I'm pleased with that. I'm pleased that we were able to do something very concrete. I'm also grateful that I had a chance to work with others on some adjustments, particularly around downtown, that would help our businesses survive. And so, for example, the Kirkwood closure, where we've created kind of a plaza, the parklets, which are the little dining areas outside of specific restaurants, all those were intended to increase options for getting customers in the door in a COVID-safe kind of way. And those all required ordinances and actions that came before council. So just the chance to work on things like that was really meaningful, because I knew that there are businesses for whom that makes a difference, and every single one of those businesses is also an employer. They have wages they have to pay and people who rely on them for income. So I'm grateful that I had the chance to work on those kinds of things.
Thank you.
You know, there are so many different layers of government, and they're not even layers in a hierarchical kind of sense, but we have city officials, so the mayor, city council, the clerk. We have county officials, county council, county commissioners, county clerk. We have township officers that also have a role. And you're right, it does require a fair amount of coordination, particularly in crisis moments like a pandemic. So particularly when, for example, the pandemic started, we did need to coordinate our activities and make sure that we could cover as much as we can with the assistance we were providing, whether that was advisory assistance or financial assistance. It did require a lot of coordination and conversations to make sure we were helping individuals who had fallen behind on a water bill and were about to have their water shut off, all the way to local employers who had trouble making payroll in a given month. So we had to talk to each other a lot about that. I think beyond that, just beyond kind of major events like that, there are also specific issues that span multiple areas of government. So for example, we recently restarted an annexation process that looked at incorporating some surrounding areas into City of Bloomington limits. And I know that council leadership met fairly regularly every couple of weeks with several members of county council. We were able to sit down and say, okay, let's look at maps. Let's talk through this. How will this impact residents? What areas make sense? What areas might need to be adjusted? I think there are two different mindsets you can bring to elected office, like the one I hold. Okay, one is that of a representative, as a public servant. How can I help people solve problems? How can I help them find out more about how to access their government, like we talked about? How can I represent their interests when we're looking at legislation? Okay. Another mindset to bring to this work is that of an activist. I care deeply about climate change, or I care deeply about animal rights, or I care deeply about poverty, and every issue I look at is going to be through that lens. Okay, there's a place for both of those. You know, there are times when you can be an activist around particular issues and a representative. Sooner or later, though, those are going to bump into each other. Okay, sooner or later, you will encounter residents that you represent, or that I represent, who may feel differently than me on a particular issue. You know, it keeps coming up, but helping people solve problems. It is so rewarding for me to have people suddenly feel like they can participate in their own government, and to know how to do it. And I've worked with citizen groups who cared about a particular issue but didn't know who to talk to, and it was so helpful. It was so rewarding for me to try and be helpful and to say, okay, let's talk about the Board of Public Works and the Board of Public Safety and how they play into this issue. Let's talk about when their meetings are and what public comment looks like. How do you make public comment? So I think equipping people with the knowledge and the confidence they need to participate in their own government is so rewarding, because it can never just be about the elected officials. I mean, democracy is a spectator sport. Or is not a spectator sport. Everyone needs to be part of it. And so that is, I am just thrilled when I see people start taking the lead on things and say in a constituent meeting, okay, everybody, I looked up these kinds of meetings, so anybody who wants to join me, come join me. I love that. So yeah, I mean, enabling and equipping people, I think, is just a very rewarding thing. Oh, it always depends on the week. I think, I guess the short answer is I'm not sure, and it varies. What it feels like I spend the most time on, I think, is just research and all that I have to do to actually understand legislation that's coming before us or an issue that we need to vote on. Again, I am a development officer, a fundraiser at IU in my day job. I don't have the expertise of running a nationally recognized park system or managing utilities or anything. So there's a ton of reading involved in that, and a ton of research and conversations with people saying, meeting with a controller, meeting with a parks director and saying, okay, here's some of my questions, help me understand, or what am I not thinking of here? Is there anything that I should be asking you that hasn't occurred to me? So a lot of that research and preparing myself to be of help to residents, preparing myself to actually vote on legislation, feels like a really big part of what I do. That in many ways, it's not special. It's not something reserved for just a handful of people. I never planned to run for office. It seemed like an opportunity to serve. And it happened to be an elected role, so I had to run for it. But very, very, very ordinary people, and that would be me in a nutshell, very ordinary people can play a part in their government. They can influence the outcomes of decisions that we make. And I think there are times when it's all kinds of mysterious and wait, what meetings do I need to go to discuss this or something? But again, time and again, I have watched elected officials change their vote mid-meeting because of what they hear during public comment. I've watched people like me, who'd never really planned to run for office and make an impact. So yeah, democracy is not a spectator sport. It's something everyone can be a part of in some small way or in some major way. And I think one of the most exciting things to do is to help people think about where they might fit. Is there a board? Is there a commission? There is a role out there that needs you, is something I would say to people. The decisions we make impact services and resources that touch residents every single day. How we budget for public safety, for our fire department or our police department, is something that matters to everybody. How well we manage the logistics for chemicals we need to purify our water so it could be drinkable, that matters. The priorities we place on different routes on public transit and how much we give in the way of resources to public transit and expanding it, that matters. So I think anyone who rides a bus or travels these streets or drinks water locally is in one way or another impacted, sometimes directly, sometimes much more indirectly, by issues that come before us.